Welcome back to the Star Wars Station. I'm your host, Carter. We are so excited to continue to kick this YouTube channel off. We're a Star Wars podcast. We've had this podcast for a little over a year. Star Wars Station Communication, you can find it here on YouTube. You can also find it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. That's the main body of our work, but we're now branching out into YouTube. This is my second video I've made for YouTube, and we're really trying to grow our YouTube presence. We want to continue to see this page grow. We want to get more subscribers. We want to get more likes because we have some big plans for this YouTube channel as it relates to our regular podcast. So if you're a regular podcast listener, subscribe, like this video. Or if you're not a regular podcast listener but you found this video, go check out the podcast. All that stuff's in the link below. But today we want to talk about Star Wars Outlaws. We've been talking a lot about Star Wars Outlaws on the podcast, and my last video was about that, but that's because there's so much exciting buzz around Star Wars Outlaws right now. We have gotten all kinds of content for this game in a really, really short period of time. We got the gameplay, we have a trailer, and we've had a lot of exclusive interviews come out about the game. And we got a lot more information than anyone had any idea we were going to get for an open-world Star Wars game coming in 2024. The interview questions are kind of what spun off this new idea for this video. They're why I make this video, because I had a thought that I really, really think you're going to enjoy. And so it was confirmed by Julian Gaggerty at Ubisoft in an interview with IGN that this game is going to take place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which is a great, great period. And I'm going to read his quote for you guys right here. When we were starting off the discussions with Lucasfilm, it was very clear that the 1 year period between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, that's where the Rebels aren't part of the picture. And he goes on to say, the Empire's taking more and more control, but the syndicates, they're taking more power, and they're exploiting all of these weaknesses. So it really is a moment where the underworld is thriving, and there's no better situation for an established or a rookie smuggler to cut their teeth with that particular moment. And so this interview question gives me a lot of gears turning in my head. It's really exciting because hearing about the underworld in between Empire and Return of the Jedi means that we're going to hear about one major event that takes place in that time period that is seriously worth noting. That major event is Han Solo's body being transported to Jabba the Hutt after the Empire Strikes Back. This transport of Solo's body to Jabba's palace has spawned a bunch of stories in the comic books. It's Han's body. He is a pawn between the Shadow Collective and Crimson Dawn, and Crimson Dawn is led by his ex-girlfriend Kira, and he's a pawn in this battle between Crimson Dawn and the Empire. And so this conflict is covered in 3 really good separate comic events that take place during this era, as well as 4 ongoing comic series. And so I'm positive that Outlaws is going to touch on that piece of Star Wars, and it is going to reference it, especially Han's body being frozen in carbonite, being in the trailer. They're going to have to reference these stories. And so I don't think that's a big deal. I think that it's going to be really easy for them to reference those stories. As we saw in Jedi Survivor, they've worked so well with the publishing initiative around the High Republic that I don't see why there would be any disconnect between Ubisoft and the publishers. And so I think that we're going to get content like that. So there's a second event, and that's the subject of this video that I want to talk about. There's a second major event that takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi that we are going to have to discuss. The event that I'm talking about has to do with the Rebel Alliance, and it is that they are famously able to steal the second Death Star plans with the help of Bothans.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Is it those Bothans? Those Bothans? Those Bothans? Those Bothans? These Bothans? It is none of those Bothans, because the Bothans, while introduced in the Return of the Jedi through Mon Mothma's dialogue that we just saw, have never been pictured. They've only been mentioned in that single line in Return of the Jedi. In the Legends continuity, this was tackled in 1991 by Heir to the Empire, written by Timothy Zahn, We just finished talking about that whole trilogy over on the podcast, so go check that out if you haven't listened to it. But Borsk Falia is a Bothan, and he plays a huge role in New Republic politics in the Heir to the Empire trilogy. And so that set the Bothan standard for Legends. They've been depicted in numerous ways in Legends, as you saw from those pictures. Sometimes they're depicted as basically just furry humans, or they're depicted as straight-up, complete dog people. And somewhere in between is where they always get portrayed. And so that was in the Legends continuity. And in the Legends continuity, the Bothans had an extensive intelligence network, and they were extremely politically adept. That's what allowed them to be these spies that got the Death Star plans in the first place. However, in the current canon continuity, we don't know anything about Bothans. We know very, very little. Because since the canon reset in 2014, after Disney acquired Lucasfilm, the mention of Bothans and their appearance has been avoided in its entirety, all but for a handful of canon sources. This omission is really, really notable because it's become a joke in the Star Wars community. People will talk about it and laugh about it because Bothans were pretty well established very early on in the Legends continuity, and it's been nearly a decade, and we still don't have any information on them. Confirmed in 2019 by Matt Martin, who is a member of the Lucasfilm Story Group on Twitter, the lack of Bothans is intentional, and they don't want to bring them into canon anytime soon, and here's what he had to say about it. It's pretty easy to confirm we are purposefully trying not to show them to leave all possibilities for when that story gets told. The dude in Resistance is based on an EU design of a Bothan that the animation art team used as a reference for a background alien. And so this tweet thread that is referenced here was about a character in Star Wars Resistance that looks exactly like a Bothan being displayed there, and someone thinking it was a Bothan. And Matt Martin had to come in and say, nope, not a Bothan. We still have not canonized what they look like, who they are, what they could be. And so this is where I think a story set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi is ripe to really show us what a Bothan is. I don't think it would be really hard for them to fit that element of espionage and secrecy and all of that the Bothans are known for in Legends and from the one dialogue in Return of the Jedi into an open-world Star Wars game that's focused on the underworld. I think there's a really natural, seamless transition there. I could really see something like this getting woven into Outlaws, even if it's just like a small acknowledgement or a Bothan appears just for a split second with a little bit of dialogue about how they're trying to find the Death Star plans. You know, behind the films and the TV shows, video games reach the most Star Wars fans, and so it would make a lot of sense to include something like the visual canonization of Bothans in a game like Outlaws. Will Bothans be canonized the same as their Legends counterpart? I'm not really sure. Matt Martin, in the same tweet thread, said that he thought that there was a possibility for something more interesting was out there, and that there might be an even better thing that the Bothans could be other than, you know, dog people. So we don't really know. Only time's going to tell. But what do you think? Do you think Bothans are still a species? Are they an organization unto themselves? You know, let us know what you think Bothans are, if they're going to show up in the new game, in the comments below. You guys can let me know, and let me know what you'd like to make for our next video. We're going to keep cranking out these Star Wars Station videos anytime inspiration strikes or anytime you guys give us a good topic. So please be commenting those below. Check us out on everything else. We're all over the place on social media. We have an Instagram page, a Twitter, a Patreon. We're all over the place. So please check us out. Our Patreon is patreon.com/StarWarsStation. And until next time, keep it wizard.